Sydney is one of the most famous cities in the world, has the biggest natural harbour in the world, and according to several respected surveys and rankings, it's one of the most expensive and desirable places to live and work in the world. We visited Sydney for the very first time, and we present you with the surprises that we were certainly not prepared for, and some we definitely were not expecting about this beautiful city. So, in no particular order, here's our 8 observations as a first-time visitor, which we hope will entertain, inform, and prepare you for your own stay. Let's go! There's lots of things in Sydney that are completely familiar if you're from the UK, Europe, or the US. They have right-hand drive cars and drive on the left like the UK, but measure distance in kilometres like Europe, not miles like the UK and US. They have McDonald's here, and let's be honest, you could probably go to the moon and buy a Big Mac there. But where's Burger King? And is this a cheap knockoff? No. When Burger King reached Australia in 1971, it discovered there was already a local restaurant there called Burger King, so the franchise owner Jack Cowan called it Hungry Jack's. It's still Burger King, but it just looks different. Also, Diet Cokes and other canned drinks are, well, as you'd expect. But hold on, they look a little bit different. Can you spot what it is? I couldn't quite put my finger on it until I looked a little closer. And the cans are slightly larger. 375ml of your favourite beverage, not 330ml that we get in the UK. Are we getting slightly shortchanged in the UK? Story of our lives. Australians make great coffee, but ask for an Americano and they might look at you like you've had one too many death flips. An Americano here is called a long black, which is ironic because by European standards, it's a very short black and devastatingly strong. Just how I like it. Given all the bays, harbours and quite frankly impossibly complicated coastline, you'd be forgiven to think that Sydney is as flat as the Florida Everglades. It's not. There are a lot of hills. The whole city is built on a load of long glacially formed hills that mostly run north to south. In some places there are even cliffs along the water, so while you don't quite need the energy and balance of a mountain goat to get around, a decent stroll will probably leave you gasping for a 375ml serving of your favourite beverage. Death flips of this size are not recommended. With a population of 5.5 lucky citizens and with the aforementioned hills and infinite coastline, you'd be forgiven for thinking getting around the area takes more planning than an Everest expedition. Well, thankfully, you don't need to be Sir Edmund Hillary to get around Sydney. He's from Auckland, New Zealand, by the way. Its network of buses, trams and ferries is simplicity itself. Everything is a cashless tap-on, tap-off dream. Whatever method of transport you choose, your ride is clean, modern, cheap, certainly compared to the UK, regular and on time, certainly compared to the UK. Exploring the harbour, visiting the stunning Blue Mountains or just meandering around the city itself, we haven't experienced anything as simple, fun and convenient anywhere else. A modern city infrastructure at its best. Sir Edmund would be proud, but then he wouldn't have been half as famous if he'd had just used Apple Pay and a tram to reach the summit of Everest, would he? Everywhere you look in Sydney there's restaurants, fast food outlets, bars, cafes, and you literally can't walk 5 metres without some deli window holding you in its irresistible calorific grasp. It's not cheap though, whether it's a simple packet of Tim Tams, or the dark chocolate ones are to die for, or a 7-course Michelin star degustation that sings on your palate like a full production of La Traviata at the Opera House, it will cost you. Actually, I'm misinforming you. There are no Michelin-star restaurants in Sydney. Why? Well, Michelin does not yet produce a guide for Australia, and that doesn't stop the cuisine being world-class. Just don't forget your wallet, or preferably someone else's. Speaking of the Opera House, were we? Have you ever been hyped for a visit to some of the world's most iconic locations only to get there at much expense to find it's more underwhelming than a new Star Trek live-action series? I'm talking Picard level of anticlimactic. Well, you're going to get TNG levels of satisfaction with Sydney's most famous icon. No, not rock behemoths AC/DC formed in Sydney in 1973, but the Opera House. Actually, AC/DC does come close. Pictures can't prepare you for how utterly impressive this structure is. It's such a mesmerising draw for the senses, you'll want to hang around it for hours and take more indulgent selfies than you've ever had the desire to. Like meeting your biggest lifelong music or movie idol and desperately wanting to be their friend. I want to be this building's friend. Work commenced in 1959 with an estimated build cost of 7 million Aussie dollars and a 4-year timescale. 14 years and 102 Australian dollars later, it was finished. Over time and over budget is something we in the UK can definitely identify with. The initial concept for the Opera House's unique sailing ship design supposedly struck Danish architect Jorn Utzon while he was peeling an orange and admiring its segmented nature. Good job he wasn't eating walnuts at the time. The roof is meticulously covered in over 1 million small glazed ceramic Swedish tiles, and the freestanding column holding up the most prominent central sail is the biggest in the world. Today it is considered to be a masterpiece of 20th century architecture. The Opera House is a must-visit, and don't forget to take a fully charged phone or camera. Those selfies drain your battery like a phantom of the opera. See what I did there? Now, this other icon might be a bit put out if we don't mention it, and it's technically even more impressive than the Opera House, although I don't want to be its friend. Sorry. Sydney Harbour Bridge boasts the title of the world's widest long-span bridge. According to the Guinness Book of Records, the 1,650-foot length gives the Sydney Harbour Bridge the status of being the 5th longest long-span bridge in the world. Not bad for a bridge opened in 1932. It's also fascinating to learn that they built this without the use of modern laser technology and way before one of those Instagram construction time-lapses. Despite these drawbacks, it was one of the most accurately built architectural structures of the time. Built from the outside in, when the two halves finally met, they were only an inch out from the original estimate. In fact, if you look close enough in the middle, you can still see where they solved the issue with some chewing gum and a stapler. Sydney's beaches are the envy of the world. There are over 100 lining the harbours and coastline, many of which routinely feature on lists of the world's best beaches. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to visit them all, which is understandable, but we did have time to visit a couple. Reachable from the city centre via an incredibly easy bus ride, Sea Point 3, Bondi is one of Australia's, if not the world's, most iconic beaches. Huge rolling waves has made it a national surfing reserve, while at one end, swimmers enjoy the legendary Icebergs ocean pool all year round. At the other end of Sydney, reachable by an incredibly scenic ferry ride across Sydney Harbour, is Manly Beach, which reminds me a little of Florida with its long stretches of golden sand, volleyballers and beach-facing apartment blocks. Swimming in the sea is for the brave or stupid, though. There are 30 species of shark in and around Sydney, including the big 3 or deadliest sharks on the planet: the great white shark, the bull shark and tiger shark. Sydney is not only a gastronomic delight for humans, it seems. Actually, while we were in Manly, there was a bull shark warning put out across the beach PA system, and everyone had to get out of the water. Tasty. We've just mentioned the delights of Sydney's coastal waters, and if you don't fancy being a Hungry Jack's meal deal for a passing great white, then I'm afraid staying on land doesn't much reduce the chances of a grisly and painful death either. Not everything wild in Australia is out to kill you, but there's a good selection of critters that will try. Around 100 species of Australian snakes are venomous, although only 12 are likely to inflict a wound that can kill you. Comforting, eh? Especially when many live in Sydney. But thankfully we didn't see any of these friendly beasts, but we did see some rather interesting birds in Hyde Park, and some giant fruit bats crawling all over a tree under which we were enjoying a delicious meal. These things were huge, like monkeys with wings. They might look quite cute, but resist the urge to approach them under any circumstances. Yes, they carry potentially harmful diseases. Surprise, surprise, another wild thing trying to kill you. Sydney, you are beautiful. Beautifully weird. And with that, how about watching this next? Thank you.